This morning, Dr. Wendy Schofer has taken time to come and talk to us about some very interesting things with things that she does with her families that are struggling with weight. Dr. Schofer went to Drexel University College of Medicine. Following that, she did her pediatric residency at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. She has taken her experiences from the medical office into the community and finds great value in working with families to educate their daily lifestyle choices and influence health much more than prescribed medicines. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Schofer.
Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. You know, it's fascinating when you get introduced and you have no idea what's actually going to be said, like which little threads are going to be pulled out from. I appreciate that, and the abbreviated version. So I've had a recent challenge, which is to introduce yourself without mentioning what it is that you do. And I love it because I've been practicing it, like saying, hi, I'm Wendy. I'm a quirky girl. Okay, you see that one. Okay, I'm a quirky girl who loves coffee, play, and the sound of laughter. And I think that, kind of like, how can we incorporate and describe ourselves in different ways? And oh yes, by the way, of course, I'm a pediatrician. Okay, kind of comes along with that. What we're going to be doing today is expanding upon some themes that I have been seeing and some tools that I've been using in both the clinical office as well as in the community, and most importantly, with my own life and my own family, and how that has impacted me, and by ripple effect, all of those around. And I'm just going to acknowledge right now, this is so exciting. Yeah, those are nerves talking. So we're going to work on this one. So let's just dive right in. So talking about innovative ways to support families struggling with weight. I'm going to acknowledge from the get-go, every time I've said what this presentation was going to be, auto-fill, always wanted to say families struggling with weight loss. Fascinating how predictive text is trying to go there and assume where we're going. I think that is a fascinating commentary on where we are right now. So I was asked to do learning objectives, okay? Because this is a CME talk. Absolutely, we've got learning objectives. I'm going to put this out there, okay? These are invitations for you. I can't tell exactly what each and every one of you is going to take away from this conversation, but I'm going to be inviting you to consider different psychosocial problems that families are facing right now, as well as us as physicians. What are the psychosocial challenges that we're facing right now? Considering some tools for engaging families, and I'm going to invite you to experiment with using those tools after our conversation today. And then also, I will be demonstrating how I'm using those in the family health coaching program that we're going to be describing today. And then we also have my disclosure on there, so a lot of invitations. Okay, this is Wendy, okay? I gotta tell you, for the longest time, this scared me to do presentation in front of everyone, to do the grand rounds, because of the way my brain works. My brain does not work with quoting numbers, living in the realm of statistics, and quoting references, and always going back to that. Oh my goodness, like trying to remember exactly what that is and pull it out at the right time. And so that held me back for a long time. And then I realized I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm trying to use skills that others really have a strength there, but it's not mine. My strength is in storytelling and in emotions. And it's equally valid. I'm going to put that out there today. The conversation is going to be about storytelling and emotions today, and how we can really harness that in our practice right now. And also find your strengths, work to them, work to them. So here's the problem as I identify it. We are struggling with weight, each and every one of us. So perhaps that's something where you can say, oh yes, I see how that applies to me, but my struggles with my own weight, my relationship with how I eat, how I move, what that means to me. Maybe your struggle is with maybe seeing kind of what I call the side eye, side-eyeing, like, how are your kids growing? What are the habits they have? How do you think that their weight is impacting their health? Or maybe it's in the office. The struggles that we have as physicians, as clinicians, as part of the healthcare team, and supporting our families that are struggling with weight. Sound a little bit familiar to anybody? Anybody kind of like, yeah, I apply to, or that applies to one of those applies to me. How about that? Yeah, okay. So, not the clearest picture, but here's the story that goes behind it, okay? So, this is young Lieutenant Schofer. Yes, the military. All right. So, Lieutenant Dr. Schofer learned so many brilliant things in her training and in her practice. She learned about health. She learned about how to raise a healthy family, what it is that we need to do to feed our children, to nurture our children, to engage them with activity, all the ingredients to raise healthy children. And so back in the day, okay, which is not that long ago, okay, maybe that picture is a little bit long ago, but what I would do is I would hear the concerns that parents would have in the office. And I would say, you know what, let's work together. Let's explore this, eating habits, movement habits, and then we would construct a plan. I would write out and prescribe to them about portions, about calories, about how to compose meals, how much activity their children should be having, what it means to be having a sweat, how to get this happening for their family. And we can compose a plan. I prescribe that and I give it to them. I say, come back, let's talk about this 3 to 6 months, because nothing happens overnight. And they would come back to me in 3 to 6 months. I'm like, that didn't work. Okay, I hate exercising. My kids hate exercising. They don't want to do that. Be like, you know what? This just created issues. We were banging our heads the entire time. This doesn't fit us in our life. I was thinking, there's something missing. I know they're doing their best. I'm doing my best. What's missing here? Growth was continuing to happen. And as we're looking at the growth curves, I'm not making any difference whatsoever. And it hit home. I had my own concerns with my kids as I found the candy wrappers tucked around the bed. Now, you know, the whole thing, like no candy in your room, no food in your room. I'm saying it's because I don't want to have pests in the house, because I don't want to have bugs and all this kind of stuff. Okay, it's actually because I'm trying to keep an eye on what is it that my kids are eating, just noticing all of this coming up. We're having food fights about what it is that you need to eat when. And then, of course, for anyone who's been in the military, mandatory fun. Okay, you're going to go out, you're going to move thyself, go out and exercise, and you're going to enjoy it. You're going to love it. That's what I call mandatory fun, okay? Spoiler, they did not have fun with that. But again, we are all doing the very best that we can. I firmly believe that, each and every one of us. And our mistakes are our best teachers. Mistakes have been made. My children like to remind me very often how the approach that I had back then did not work. It was not working for me. It was not working for them. It was not working for the relationships that we were building with ourselves, with food, with our bodies. So today's presentation, I'm going to invite you to consider 3 things, just 3 things. And with each of those, I'm going to tie in with an emotion. So it's the storytelling and the emotions. You see where this is going. Okay. So number 1, it's not about the weight. As we're talking about this, I'm going to invite you to consider cultivating some compassion. First of all, for yourself. Compassion is, how we're suffering together. It's seeing the struggles that each and every one of us is having, starting with ourselves. Like, I'm struggling with this, and I'm going to offer you're not alone. So it's not about the weight. Let's tell a story of Emily and her mom. All names have been changed. This is the name that I remember at this point in time, okay? So I met Emily and her mom about, goodness, I'd say at this point it was probably 10 or 12 years ago, okay? She is a thriving 6-year-old girl coming in for her well visit. And as I do with all of my general pediatrics patients, I first look at their growth chart after they've gotten their vitals done, kind of see where they've been going. I had the pleasure, the benefit of getting to see where she had been growing over time. And I saw that she had been consistently growing at over the 85th percentile for both her weight, for her BMI. It's just where she has been. And she's been quite consistent. And kind of did my pre-chart review, and then I just went in. Go figure, I warmed up the crowd. I told jokes. I was getting to know her. I was getting to know her, her mother. And I found out about how she was thriving in 1st grade now. She was so very social, no concerns whatsoever there. So academically, socially, doing it, all right? She had a varied diet. There were no restrictions. She loved water. And there wasn't a veggie that she had, any issues with whatsoever. She loved to go outside and play, unstructured play, whenever she had the opportunity. I was like, this is amazing. Going through, check, check, check. And then at the end of the visit, Mom whispers to me, aren't you going to say something about her BMI? I said, what about it? And she just broke down in tears. She said, every single well visit, every single time I come in for a visit with my child, which was basically well visits for her because she was a healthy kid. She's like, I always hear about how she's overweight and how I need to change what it is that I'm doing. I need to feed her differently. I need to get her to move more. I'm failing my child. This child was thriving. She was doing all the things as we're looking at like healthy lifestyle and engagement and growing and thriving, all of it. And yet her mom felt that she was failing her child. It got me thinking right then and there. I'm like, what is the problem? Like, even asking yourself right now, like, what is the problem that you're seeing here? Is there a problem? What is the problem? Some of you are shaking your heads when I'm saying, is there a problem? And you're like, no, no problem. I'm going to offer there is a problem here. The problem is that we're in search of a fix for weight. We are seeing weight as the problem. We're seeing it as something that we're kind of focusing in on and saying, aha, I see that. Oh my gosh, I totally got Billy Crystal in my head every single time I say that. Aha! If you don't know the reference, we need to talk some old movies. Anyway, but we are searching for the problem so that we can fix it. And weight, the measurements, it's giving us something right here in front of us. And what do we do when we are searching for a fix? Because this is what our brains do. Our brains are constantly looking for what's the problem so that we can then find the fix, the answer, because that makes us feel so much better. Problem, fix, beautiful. Well, we have a lot of rational, and I say rational from the sense of thinking responses. How do we fix weight? Well, we got to control, we got to manage. We got to learn what on earth the word moderation is. We say it all the time. What does moderation mean? Looking at calories in, looking at calories out, moving more, eating less. This all sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? So change what it is that you're doing. You've got to have different habits. How often are these the prescriptions that we've heard of in our society, but also what we've been taught along the way? This is how we need to fix weight. And I challenge that what we're doing right now is we are uncovering the way that we have such a focus on the body, such a fascination with saying how we need to change the body in order to be able to first determine success. Much like Emily's mom, she felt that she was failing as she was looking at her child, as she was looking at her body, as she was looking at her weight. And so to be able to determine not just success, but also the concept of health. And how does this spill over in so many different areas in our lives? Our success with parenting, our own sense of worthiness, of making progress. Am I making progress here or not? Well, let me look at the scale. You see how this comes up. You see this in your office. Perhaps you're feeling that and experiencing that on your own. So, our brains are constantly absorbing what it is, like how the world works all the time, and how much we've absorbed this message about focusing on our body, determining our success, our health based off of what our bodies are looking like. This is baked into our culture. This is weight stigma. Looking at how, we're having these thoughts that have been taught over time. I mean, it's societal, teaching us to think about what's good versus bad. Okay, by the way, this is just the way the brains work. Like, our brains are always looking at it's either this or that. It's all this, like the dichotomy. It's either this or that. Because we're trying to make order and sense in the world. And how is this something that's actually creating more insanity in our own worlds? That we're trying to figure this out, and it's like, well, it's either this or that. Acceptable, unacceptable, healthy and unhealthy. And so much of this is focusing down on weight. We have these messages, like even thinking about it as we're teaching children in school. Who's seen those sheets where, the kids come home with the homework and they need to label what's healthy versus unhealthy, whether you have different food choices or different activities, and it's like, it's either this or that. And you're like, actually tonight I think ice cream could be a very healthy choice. Fascinating. And as we start labeling more and more, as we continue to do that, what's good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, how that can be internalized, where we start making judgments about ourselves, start labeling ourselves as good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, and the shame and the stigma that comes from that. So I hate putting out pictures of other people, which is why if you ever see anything that I do, I tend to use pictures of myself, not because it's all about me, but it's because I'm telling the story through my eyes. And I recognize how much we get tied into making presumptions about other people's bodies. But I've used this one before because I think it's a fascinating commentary about, all right, well, let's look at what is healthy. What is healthy? And just pause for a moment as you think about, as you're looking at these images of these two girls. What comes up in your mind? Do you notice maybe a kind of tendency to say, well, I see a certain body type I can label as healthy or unhealthy. Perhaps you're saying, I need to ask a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe I can look at, are there habits healthy or unhealthy? Tell me a little bit more. So how often does this come up when we're asking about health, asking ourselves, how can I help these families? And we're turning back to, well, what is it that the medical guidelines are saying? What are the norms? Well, perhaps based off of the norms, who determined the norms, by the way? According to whom? Just asking all along the way, according to whom? The norms for this child. And then we also have diet culture with the messaging of, you know, thin is in, and we've got all of these ideals, and my goodness, every time you scroll, you are seeing the ideals. According to whom? Who created the norms? Who created the ideals? And how much are we buying into that? And how is that impacting ourselves? The stories that we're telling ourselves about our success, our progress, our health. How is that impacting the relationships that we're getting to build with ourselves, with our family members, and with our patients, with our community? So as we're looking at this, that focus on the weight to determine success and progress is actually creating a lot of collateral damage, where we're having so much about the stress, that, you know, more stress, there's more to do now. Emily's mom is thinking, okay, this isn't enough. I need to continue to do more. And basically she was beating herself up over all of this, that everything that she was doing wasn't right. She needed to do more in order to actually see that she was helping her child. And see how that contributes to disordered relationships. And we'll get into a little bit more with the relationships in just a few moments. But I highlight the quote from Marshall Goldsmith, "What got you here won't get you there." I think about that, like even when we're looking in the office and we're assessing growth and eating habits and movement patterns. And sometimes it kind of stands out. There's been increased caloric intake. There's been decreased physical activity. I mean, think about with COVID, okay? There's a lot of things that we can point to and say, okay, now we're seeing the increase in weight gain. Like, what are the root causes here? But the thing is that the thing that got you here isn't necessarily what's going to take you there. I actually think of this in the reverse. What got you here, just doing a reverse on that, is not necessarily the answer. You can't just reverse face and say, okay, well, I ate extra. Now I need to cut it out. I need to restrict, to eat less. Now, our rational thinking brain is like, okay, calories in, calories out. What we're missing is the human. We're missing the human experience here. We are not just some kind of machine that we can say, calculate it in, calories out. Decrease movement here, now we have to increase for it, because we're missing the emotional experience. So I challenge everyone that the actual problem that was being demonstrated with Emily and her mom was what mom was believing. The problem was her belief that she was failing her child. Everything else was going groovy in that room, in the relationships that they were talking about and outlining for me as I was asking all the different questions. But the relationship that the mother was having with herself, the relationship that she was, how that was impacting her relationship with her daughter, that was the problem. Emotions. What emotion do you think mom was feeling when she was thinking, I'm failing my child? Yeah, maybe some guilt. Yeah. I don't think of failure as a feeling, but I got to tell you, kind of think about like, what is that feeling when you're like, I've failed? Is it like disappointment? Is it guilt? That heaviness? Sometimes we can't even like label the word, because I got to tell you, we're still kind of stunted when it comes to describing emotions. But just kind of like sitting with it, like, what is it that I feel in my body? And your body is like talking out loud, going, there is this heavy feeling in my chest. I feel icky in my belly. Sometimes we just don't have the words for the emotions, but our body is still talking to us. I put up the wheel of emotions. So many of us know, happy, sad, glad, mad. There's a full range, the full spectrum and rainbow of emotions. And seeing the connection with how that impacts how we feel about ourselves, how we show up in our relationships and in life. How many of these emotions I hear all the time? They're being described: the frustration, the guilt, the disappointment, fear, shame. When I describe the work that I do, I talk about how I work with parents that are worried about their children's weight. That's evolved over time. Initially, I was talking about how I work with parents of overweight children. And I realized that worry is actually the problem, okay? Kind of going back to, it's not about the overweight child, it's about the worry about their weight. And just looking at a definition, worry is a state of anxiety or uncertainty over actual or potential problems. And what I've learned, and why I've really kind of changed the way that I'm describing this, is that worry isn't based on what the scale is telling us. It's not based on where our kids are on the growth chart. Just going to sit there for a moment. Worry is not based on the numbers. Think about this. What is it that parents are hearing all the time? What is it that we're hearing? Increasing rates of obesity, the prevalence. It had another slide here about the CDC information that's coming out, and all the different journals. Again, I'm not quoting them. Okay? It's not my language, but they hear and see the risks of weight, of overweight, of obesity, of eating habits, eating disorders. And so that is influencing how they're viewing their own experience at home. So the worry is not from so much the numbers, it's by what those numbers mean to me. Emily's mom wasn't worried about her child's weight. Her worry was about what it meant to her. It was because she was thinking, I'm failing my child. She was so focusing on that number to determine her success. She was worried about that and staying in this place that she just wasn't able to enjoy all the beautiful things that her child was doing, that they were doing together. So if it's not about the weight, what is it about? All right. Number 2, it's about understanding relationships. And I've dropped some relationship references along the way here today. So let's dive into that a little bit more. And as we're doing that, we're going to think about cultivating some curiosity. First of all, what on earth are relationships? Yes, I clearly love this t-shirt so much that I'm wearing it today and for these photos. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So as I think about relationships, I think about a relationship, all relationships, as being tied to beliefs, your thoughts, and your emotions. I mean, think about, how would you describe your relationship? Maybe with someone in your life. You get to pick. How would you describe your relationship with yourself? with your body. And always a treasure trove of information. How would you describe your relationship with food? Just thinking about that. What's coming up? I think it's fascinating by how often folks say, she has a troubled relationship with food. Like, it's fascinating how somebody looking from the outside in, labeling others' relationships. Because again, looking at it through the lens of it's someone's thoughts, their feelings about food. We can't necessarily see that from the outside. Just like when we were back with the image of the two girls next to each other. Maybe we would try to describe, well, what is their relationship with their food or with their body? Perhaps there is one who's thinking, I love my body. I love what it can do. I take care of my body. Maybe there's another one that's focusing in on the different, parts of the body. I don't like my thighs. I don't like my belly. I don't like the way this looks. I need to change it. We don't know who either one of those statements applies to, but just start thinking about the relationship. What other information could we gather about how to support them? So I think of relationships as being dynamic connections and patterns of thought, emotions, and behaviors. Everything we do is patterns. Like, we're all looking at pattern recognition all the time. It's not a single thought. It's the pattern of thoughts. By the way, thoughts that you have over and over again, so much so that it just feels like it's the truth, that's a belief. How many times we've taken on beliefs from our society about ourselves. We're like, oh, hold on, let me just look at this. How is this impacting my relationship with myself? And so I see many different ways how relationships can apply to, the relationship that you have with your physical body, with your food, with yourself, with your family. So thinking about this, you can pick out any different relationship that you want to think about. But, when you have loving thoughts about someone, a lot of times it's easier to look outward than to look at ourselves. So having loving thoughts about someone, okay? I'm going to throw a little, throw something out there, for my husband. He is amazing. He is amazing. There's nothing he can't do. He is just everything to me. I'm having loving thoughts about him. Guess what? I feel love. I can feel it right now just thinking about all this. How do I show up? What do I do? I act in a loving manner. That's the relationship. But think about when we have maybe another example, okay? So oftentimes I go back to, okay, you had that relationship back in high school, that boyfriend that everybody said, he's not good for you, okay? Maybe you had the girlfriend, she's not good for you. And then what happens? You're like, makes them even more intriguing. Yeah. You tell me what to do. You tell me what not to do. No way. I'm not listening to that. I want it even more. How does that happen with our food? You know what? That ice cream is not good for you. You can't have that. No more of it. And the more that we're told that, the more that we want it. We want it more and more. It's just the way our brains are working. It's like, the resistance and the pushback. Well, how often are we having that when we're thinking about these restrictive type of relationships? You can't do that. Want it even more. So coming back to that thought, that belief, I'm failing my child. and the emotions that are, coming up. And we could dial in a whole bunch of different emotions for each and every one of us if we're thinking that. Just imagine what Emily's mom was experiencing. I want you to think about this concept that everything that we do is because of an emotion. So, and I highlight on the slide, that's not just about emotional eating. So many times when we talk about emotions and weight, we come right to emotional eating, which has like this connotation of like, emotional eating, bad. All right, we are all emotional eaters. As I'm looking in this audience right now, okay, perhaps there is one person who will say, nope, no, not me. I eat when I'm hungry, I stop when I've had enough, and that's it. Otherwise, kitchen is closed. All right, cool. Glad that works for you. For the rest of us, let's just acknowledge that everything that we do is because of an emotion, including eating. So think about when we have, Thanksgiving coming up. What are the emotions that come up around Thanksgiving? I'm going to steer this a little bit. Okay, let's think about the Hallmark, not the Hallmark crazy movie one, but like the Hallmark Thanksgiving. Everything's glorious, warm, you're coming together. Yeah, I'm totally painting a particular picture. Coming together. How much do we want to eat together? The communion. Okay, my Spanish brain is going in here, so comida and eating, union together. The communion, coming together. We feel good. We're actually sharing and celebrating. So think about celebrations. When you feel good, when you feel happy, a lot of times we turn to food. We celebrate together. So perhaps you feel good, and that's leading you to take action. Perhaps there's an emotion, you're like, I can't handle feeling this way. I don't want to feel this emotion. Take your pick. Frustration. I'm going to put boredom in here. Restlessness. Disappointment. Did I already mention frustration? It just comes up a lot for me. How often do you find yourself turning to food? Be like, I just need something. I need to feel better right now. So the emotions, they are either leading us to take action, or we so desperately don't want to feel these emotions that we take action to kind of numb, to dull. And a lot of times we use that in the sense of emotional eating, but there's so much more to it. There's so much more to the story. And sometimes emotions just stop us. Just stop. We don't take action. We don't, I'm just using the example with eating. We don't eat because of the emotions that we're feeling. And what we're overlooking here is the emotional experience. As we're looking in the office, as we're focusing on weight, on the body, we're overlooking the whole human emotional experience that's happening and how that's impacting all of these actions, all of the habits that we have right now. So take your pick, any of these. Powerless. Whew. What happens when you're feeling powerless? What happens when you're feeling shame? We're going to circle back to shame in just a few minutes. But as I think about the lens of relationships, okay, what I offer is that, when we can start to understand health, healthy habits, our relationships through the lens of what are the beliefs that I'm hearing here? What are the emotions? And how is that impacting behavior? Specifically, how is that creating the behavior that we're seeing right now? When we have that kind of understanding, and it takes some exploration, some questioning here. It's not about just making assumptions based off of what we see on a growth chart, on a body, or necessarily even from looking at eating habits. It's understanding more. You hear so much about the root cause. That's what we're looking at. Let's look at the relationships that are driving those behaviors that we're seeing. All right, I said three things. All right, number 3, it's actually about connection. And yes, I'm such a simple girl. My emotion is cultivating connection. I gotta tell you, I think the connection is the most amazing emotion. I'm totally thinking of it as an emotion because it drives everything that I'm doing. Absolutely everything. It's like one path for me. Connecting with myself, connecting with others, connecting with what's important. And I think that what it is that I'm doing right now is I'm sharing with you what I consider to be the language of connection, which is understanding so much more about the beliefs that are operating in the background, about the emotions that we are experiencing. It's really connecting with what is important. And ultimately, that's the question I keep on asking for myself, for my patients, for my clients, and also within my family. What is important to you? So, introducing DJ. All right, DJ is a young man that I met earlier this summer in my primary care position over at the Hampton Roads Community Center. And in the community center, I had started this summer, so all patients were new to me. And all patients were pretty much new to the system, okay? So sports physical time, everybody needs to get their papers done, and they've come from all over the place. Go, you know, you just, all right, starting from scratch. But once again, I got the vitals, I looked at his growth chart, and I knew exactly which sport he wanted to participate in. I'm making totally assumptions, and I will acknowledge that from the get-go. But I walked into the office, and I warmed up the crowd, and I said, what are we doing today? And DJ and his mom said, we're doing a sports physical. I said, all right, what else? What else is it that we need to focus on today? I was not particularly fishing here. I was just trying to ask. And DJ said, well, my weight. We need to talk about my weight. And I looked at him and I said, what about it? And he said, I'm worried about health problems. And I said, what kind of health problems? And he said, well, you know, the health problems that you get when you're overweight. I was like which ones? Just really trying to see, like, what is it that he's worried about? This is also known as we're digging, okay? Is there something in the family that he's worried about? We also went into family history and everything, but what is it? So I knew from the get-go when I met this kid that he was an amazing football player. I want him on my defensive line. Totally want him on my defensive line. Like, I totally get that, okay? Fantasy football, DJ's on it. And he was worried about his weight because he had heard all of these different messages about, watch out, watch out. And so I asked him, I'm like, what is important to you? Bringing in that question. And so we explored in the office with DJ and his mom that what was important. What was important was playing football. He loved football. He breathed football. I could smell the sweat of football in the office. It was amazing. It was so important to him. And I asked all the other questions, you know, asking about his nutrition, asking about what it is that he's doing when he's not playing football. And I said, you know what? What I hear, DJ, is that there's so much more for us to explore here today. But what's the most important is that we're going to get your sports physical done. Because we need to keep you in football. And it sounds like there are more concerns than what we can address here in a 20-minute appointment. Oh, you know those. You know those, especially with teens. They're really fun, like really quickie appointments. Like, let's build on from here. I said, what do you hear from this conversation? He says, you don't care about my weight. And I was like, okay, hold on a minute. Watch out. What's going on here? I said, tell me more. And he gave it a moment. And he said, yeah, you don't care about my weight. You care about me. And I took this exhale, because that's what I do. I took this exhale, and I was like, okay, he does see it. He does see it. He sees that what I'm actually doing in the office is I'm learning about him. I'm connecting with what's important to him. I'm exploring the values. So what's important? Values are also very much connected to emotions. What are the drivers here? What is it that's driving you to take whatever action that you choose in your life? What are your strengths? I'm digging for these all the time because we are so used to hearing in our day-to-day conversation about what isn't working, what we need to work on, what we need to fix. That story about how I thought that I needed to always like put in numbers. And so of course, I got to make more references. And I'm like, that's not my language. It's not my language when I can work to my strengths. What is possible here to connect with what's most important to me and to others? And how can we help find those strengths for others? Because a lot of times we have our own blinders on. We don't see our strengths, but others can help us with that. And in building this connection, it's creating a relationship that perhaps was not there before. So DJ thought that the right answer was to say, I need to look at my weight. We need to talk about this. And a lot of times, I don't even hear that in the office. Everybody says, no problems, no problems, no problems. And we can talk on another day about having that discussion, like introducing the conversation about, hey, is there anything about weight that you would like to discuss? But what I'm finding here is that we're building the connection to be able to say, this is a place where we can explore. I'm not making assumptions about what is important to you, what is healthy for you, what composes your health. The biggest health challenge in our country, in the world, I mean, we talk so much about obesity, we talk about mental health. Yes, yes, yes. And yet, I challenge that the biggest health threats that we have are shame, loneliness, disconnection, isolation. If the reason that I say that is because that's kind of what's going on behind the scenes when we're not connecting with individuals, when they're withdrawing any of these emotions here, feeling loneliness and shame, like thinking there's something wrong with me, and how often we will pull back when we're feeling that way. We don't want to seek help. We don't want to seek not seeking help, withdrawing, and how often we then turn to whatever the substance is that makes us feel better. Better often meaning numbing or comforting that pain. Notice how these are all emotions. The biggest challenges that we have are emotions that if we aren't opening up and welcoming that conversation about how we can address that, we're actually kind of going in the opposite direction. And so the message that I'm trying to share in the office, trying to share in the community, and practicing with myself, you are whole, you are worthy, and you have health at every weight. And we're going to continue to work on that together. So I'm a pediatric urgent care physician, okay, for CHKD Pediatric Urgent Care. I'm using these tools in the office all the time. No, I am not opening up weight conversations in urgent care. I'm not. I have a little mantra in my head. Nobody comes to see me on their best day. They're coming into urgent care because they got a problem. They got something that they are worried about. And yet, I'm using these tools: compassion, curiosity, connection, to be able to meet them where they are. And my goal, I'm going to put it out there, I do have an agenda, is to make them feel just a tiny bit better than when they came in. That's my only goal. So I use these tools in pediatric urgent care. I use these tools most definitely in primary care. And I know that there's so much more, okay? So I created the Family in Focus program. And this is another place where I am using these tools. And what we are focusing on, so again, it's created for parents that are worried about their children's weight, worried about the impact of their own weight upon raising a healthy family. And the tenets of the program, coming back to, sound familiar? Compassion, curiosity, and connection. The focus of the program is that it is parent-centered. And I did that for a very deliberate reason. In our existing medical model, okay, it's all about the kids. I completely agree with that, okay? Yes, for those that may be listening, that's about CHKD, okay? It's all about the kids. It is. It is all about the kids. And I think that parents have a very particular role here for me to be able to work one-on-one with them about understanding the beliefs. So when I say one-on-one, I mean without little ears around, okay? Understanding the beliefs, understanding the emotions, really getting curious about the relationships that we're seeing in the home from the parent's perspective. Because as you see with my image up here, okay, the child, it is all about the child. We all know from developmental pediatrics, it's all about the kid, okay? The kid will remind you of that all the time. It's all about them. But the family, the parent, has a very particular role. We are raising our kids in this environment that is very struggling right now, or very challenging in this environment. We can talk about food and movement and all the different risks in our environment and electronics and social media, and I can go on all day, but I'm not. And the parent can create the environment at home to really start shifting from that powerlessness, I'm failing my child, to this is what I can do. This is what I see that's working in my family, what I want to see more of. And so for the sake of time, I'm going to let you read here what it is that we're doing in the program. But you'll see that it's all the things that I've been talking about today, looking at the patterns. How much, by the way, emotions totally explain motivation. How often parents are like, I don't understand, my kid isn't motivated to do X, Y, Z. Well, I started flipping the word to what is the emotion that they have that's blocking that? What is it that they're believing about whatever that activity, whatever it is? That's how you get to understand the motivation, not to change, not to put a carrot to externally motivate, but to understand what is the internal motivation. Where is that coming from? Oh my gosh, so four people. So I created this program back in 2020. And I found, again, connecting with others is really the way to go. How do I connect with what is real and true and important to me? And then also, how do I connect with others? I was asked all along the way as I was telling my colleagues about Family in Focus. And they're like, well, what's the evidence? Because yes, we want evidence-based interventions. And like, what's the evidence for this approach? And my answer was, I'm creating the evidence, okay? I'm totally creating it. I had the evidence of how it was working in my own home, how it was working with myself and changing the relationships. That's where this was all born from. I saw the impact that looking at health, looking at habits, looking at weight through the lens of what are the relationships and how can we cultivate the relationships that we want to see, how that changed everything. Oh my goodness, we can have a completely separate conversation. No, I am going to just quick put it in there. First thing that changed for me was my relationship with my mother-in-law. If your mother-in-law is anything like mine, she's not changing. She's not changing. 25 plus years. I was changing the relationship that we shared. That was the moment that I was like, I need to do more of this. It's amazing. Honest to goodness, that's a separate conversation. So meanwhile, I'm cultivating the connections, okay? Which is where I'm so excited about this. Okay, so the study. Dr. Ellen Pudney did a job talk here, my goodness, 2.5 years ago. Someone clued me in that she was coming to present basically in her opportunity to get hired to work here. And I was on the virtual, so hi everybody in the virtual, so glad you're here. I was in the virtual and I kept on raising my hand, asking questions like, this is fascinating. She's a PhD nutritionist who is totally diving in and talking about the research on weight stigma. I'm like, oh, I need more of this. And I was praying that she would get hired, and she did. Okay, so she is on staff here with EVMS, Department of Pediatrics. And as soon as she got hired, she said, we're studying your program. Like, thank goodness. I don't do numbers. I don't do research. I don't do all these things. But I'm combining with this brilliant team. These are their strengths. And so that's where it was born. So Dr. Kiki from ODU and the Center for Global Health, oh man, she's our evaluations guru. And then we have Laura Jackson and Mackenzie Kelly. I'm going to highlight my medical student. We're all coming together. What we've done is we applied for a grant through HADSI, okay, and we constructed a randomized controlled trial of parents that are coming in for the 8-week Family in Focus program. Okay, it's a group program. So remember the group, you are not alone. Okay. What is magical there is that we meet every week and we get to work together. You may raise your hand this week, and then somebody else is like, ooh, they're describing my family. That I see that, that's me. We're all working together. Our outcomes for the RCT. So as you look at these, ask yourself what's not included. Because our reviewers saw it. Our reviewers are like, you overlooked BMI and A1C and weight. I'm like, exactly. It's not overlooking. It's that those are not the results. Like, that's not where we have to always come to be able to assess what is success, what is progress. We're looking at the psychosocial environment, the experience that families are having, and how we can help impact that, and then how that impacts health. It wasn't an oversight. It was baked in. So as a part of the program, so the parents in the RCT are participating in the group coaching program. There's all sorts of different opportunities to connect with Family in Focus. And I put this out here from that perspective of we can each and every one of us create different paradigms for how we can connect with people where they are right now. So in this sense, create a podcast. 101 episodes and counting, okay? That was terrifying for me, each and every one, okay? Terrifying, and yet that's where we are now, connecting with parents. Mini courses. I highlight the irony of my mini course, which has been the most popular. Weight Loss 101 for your whole family. You're like, what? She said no weight loss. What is this? It's because parents kept on asking me, where's Weight Loss 101? How do I start helping my family? I'm like, dude, it's not about the weight loss. It's not about weight loss. That's creating problems. Well, I answered that question and all of the other very commonly heard ones from parents in a mini course, just meeting people where they are. It's for free. We can connect. We can go from there. And then, of course, we have different opportunities for getting direct coaching. So I want to ask you, circling back, what is it that you want to take away from today? I'm going to invite you to consider how can you utilize tools. Yes, I'm talking about emotions as tools. How can we cultivate for ourselves and in the office compassion, curiosity, connection? And of course, I'm always going to put out there, consider collaborating, because that's how we work together. This is how we grow stronger together. It's collaborations. So it will be my pleasure to connect in whatever way is meaningful to you. And I'm going to come back. So by the way, you are totally the ripple effect. You are totally the ripple. And then we'll highlight with thanking you for CME. And I appreciate all your patience. Now, I realize that I have filled up every single last moment of this conversation. I am open to questions now, questions later. I realize people have to go. I appreciate you being here. And did you get your numbers? Did you get your CME numbers? You know where to find me. Thank you so much. I see a hand, yes.
Hi.
Thank you all. Sorry, no, we're coming right. I just want to thank you. Thank you. And you know what? You can blame me for being late. I love it. I always told my kids, you can blame me all the time. I don't care. It's totally cool.
Hi. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a resident. I truly appreciate everything you said. At the same time, the patients that I worry about most, their parents don't have the mental space, the time to care, right? And it's so hard to see them suffer and their children, and they shouldn't be responsible for it, especially like the kids under 14, right? Where they're not teenagers, they're working on habits, but it's not really their fault, right? So I guess this also makes me kind of want to cry, right? Because I don't see a solution for those kids, because the parents need to be able to take the time to do this and the time to care. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but.
Yeah, many. And I'm going to try to focus. We're looking for solutions. We want to fix it. Ask yourself, what is it that you want to fix? And I give a pause with that because I totally understand exactly where you're coming from. Get that all the time. And I realize how that is impacting how I practice, but it's also impacting the messaging that families are receiving. Parents are stressed. Parents have so many things going on right now. So much of the way that I approach in the office, but it's baked into Family in Focus, is that I'm meeting parents about the stress that they are experiencing and how that's impacting everything at home. Their beliefs for what they think is possible. Do they even think that change is possible? Why is it that we have these habits that we are practicing right now? Spoiler, because they're working. Something is working for them right now. And if they want to change, if a change is possible for them, they need to see something that's on the other side of that. There is so much, it's like a chronic stress response. Parents are just living in that right now. I didn't get into it with the full slide with it, But family in focus is really, that so much of the conversation we have is, what do you need as a parent? It's not about changing your child. It's about changing that experience that we're having right now. And I'm going to offer, you know, that whole Gandhi, like, be the change you want to see in the world? How much we take on all of the weight as, okay, that was not a pun intended. We take on so much of the burden as physicians trying to find different ways to approach this. I want to change this. And perhaps it's just being open to hearing, to seeing, maybe even offering a different perspective in the office without making it, this is what you have to do, but just receiving, what are the stressors that they have right now? What could make it just slightly better? I know that doesn't answer your question. I acknowledge that because we're looking for a fix. I think as long as we're looking for a fix, we're banging our head on the wall. Because there's not a fix for stress. There's not a fix for weight. But let's understand, that's where I'm coming at this from. And not everyone is ready, open, has the bandwidth to focus on this right now. So many of us are just going by every single day just trying to survive and can't even imagine, okay, so thinking about kind of the mental processes that are going on, can't even conceive of something outside of that focus, that stress response. It's fight or flight. They're just going from one day to the next. And I keep on reminding myself, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be a consistent message. So I had a parent in the office that flat out said, I don't like your approach. I don't like it. He needs to lose weight. Just what it is. I'm not changing her mind. I'm not trying to argue. But I am digging for connection, what's important to them, to be able to see what it is that we can build together, because otherwise, thinking about disappointment, frustration, shame, all the other things, the stress, how can we work on this together? We can have a much longer conversation. Thank you.